Many years ago, my world died. The signs came suddenly. Some migrations of birds, disappearances of towns and lakes vanishing inexplicably. Then came the fall. Rain stopped. Droughts brought our empire to its knees in the space of months. It happened so fast we couldn't respond before our cities became gravesites and battlefields. Peasants and lords alike could no longer carry on and died to the stinging winds and collapsing roofs as the desert sand swallowed everything. Mines that supplied us with much needed metals became death traps as the air ventilation became clogged with sand. Fishing industries died off as the oceans vanished. Winds picked up, and those caught with no protection suffered greatly or died miserable deaths as the sand peeled their skin off. Kingdoms that stood for 100 generations vanished as the soldiers that defended them abandoned their posts or died defending them from desperate crowds. We were of three races: Rathani, Laurenti, and Frak. The Rathani were once masters of the jungled lands, thick forests of swamp and beast-infested muck that lived in high trees. The Laurenti are small dwarf-like beings that were the shortest of all, lacking in brutality but making up in intellect. Their great sky towers the envy of the world. The Frak are my people, a middle ground of farmers, miners and scholars, simply making our way in the world. A harrowing tale of sadness and survival followed with us for the next 10 years after our last city was swallowed by the sands. The Rathani were the first to abandon their homes. Their tall bodies and thick hides could withstand the burning sands by huddling together during storms, their backs to the desert as they used each other as cover. The men would all form a circle around a hole dug into a camp before the storm, putting their heads down and using their own bodies as shields to cover their families from the scouring storms. Their skill in hunting provided much needed meat from the horrors that now scoured the deserts. The Laurenti used their great craftsmanship to create temporary shelters and tents that could withstand the sands, clothes that would stop the burning storms. Men would use their own bodies as tent pegs to hold the fabric and levers aloft, to keep the women and children safe from the storms as the winds relentlessly attacked them. While the storms raged, each man took his turn against the storm, a new man replacing one who fell from pain, while others were cared for in the centre. Their craftsmanship rivaled all, and would use this to effect to create a nigh unbreakable tent structure. The Frak survived by using the sand dunes to shield us from the sands, using clothes or our own bodies to create makeshift camps, protecting us from the great storms. Cramped quarters and careful coordination forced us to carefully manage what resources we had. The men held our tents steady, the women quickly stitched fabrics torn from the winds, or helped drag their husbands to apothecaries as they fell from exhaustion. Frak farmers would carry along with them small pots of plants they used to grow a meagre food source. Our numbers dwindled to barely a tenth of what they were within the first 5 years. We saw no need to fight each other, no need for conflict. At this point it was all together, or all to the grave. What began after this was the key to our survival. Rathani men were our wall, protecting us from the desert predators and burning sands. They held up tents and used their own muscles to carry wounded from their posts, and shielding all of us from the storms when we couldn't put up tents in time for sudden storms. Frak workmen and farmers would grow our food and water supplies, easing the use and transport of goods. The plants they grew becoming staple food sources, and sources of the fabrics we used in tents. Our doctors were the best of all, and could heal whatever wounds the desert inflicted. Laurenti's artisans would create fabrics from discarded plant leaves that would hold up to extensive punishment, and they would quickly erect tents and fortifications to defend us from the storms. What little meat we could scour from the desert beasts were given to mothers and children. The rest of us survived on a mushroom that was nutritious and gave us what we needed to survive, grew anywhere and fast but was disgusting in flavour. After around 5 years of work, we had created a system where we could work together, flawlessly, to survive the storms. But to become prosperous was something that became nearly impossible. And so this continued. For 50 more years we would march on the sand, surviving against all odds. Every storm that came we would hold fast, but we were losing hope. Elders would tell us stories of blue waters, fresh and clean, that could be drunk from without boiling. Stories of tall green trees and oceans of the old purple grasslands and flower fields. We had grown as a society, doubling our numbers by this point, and reaching levels of stability we could never hope to achieve, at a total of 27,000. It could not be helped. It could not be this. Any attempts we made to better our situation with building of structures would fail. Materials were scarce, and what we did have we needed to maintain shelter, tools and weapons. What materials we could spare were oft cast into attempts to build well sites or permanent structures we could use as we travelled. Wood was becoming increasingly scarce, and the only reliable fuel source became dried husks of a cactus that grew in the dunes. We were alive. We could survive, but there was nothing beyond it. We had a culture, but no art to reflect it. Stories to tell, but no way to record it. We had creativity, but no way to do it without it disappearing. We had a soul, but no place to worship. Most times we didn't even have a place we could bury our dead, nor the time to do it. Most would simply be wrapped in a shroud and left to be swallowed by the sands, to die forgotten in the dirt. It finally came to a head one day. An old man on his deathbed. He had said goodbye to his family and lay in sadness as he resigned himself to the end, to be left behind to suffer the sands as the group moved on. It was the only real option we had. Those who could not survive were laid on a bed, wrapped in rags and left to die. We had no other choice. He lay in quiet for a moment, and then began to howl in despair. "Gods above! Is there no end to the torment you bring upon us? What have we done to deserve this torture?" he said in between sobs of despair, as another storm approached. "We have laid to rest our hatred and distrust. We have laid bare the lies we have told and forgiven the crimes we have committed. We are together as one. Is this not enough?" His words permeated everyone's soul as he lay in his bed, weakly holding his hands up in prayer. The telltale rumble of a sudden storm approaching. There was no time to set up camp proper, so we had to huddle and weather the storm together. Rathani men gathered around us and held the group together with practiced precision. Tents and what rags could be found quickly used to huddle children and mothers to cover them from the storms. "Please! Gods above, please! I use my last breath to beg forgiveness. What more do you want us to do? We can build no temples to ask you for help, as the sands destroy them and bury them. We have done all we can and can do no more. Please, we beg you for mercy," he yelled out, as the thunderous roar approached. "Please, give us anything. I want my family to feel grass under their feet again," he choked and spluttered. It was any moment now. "I would give anything," he coughed and spluttered, "to see my family smile again." His chest felt to rise, and like that, he was gone. The camp fell to tears as the storm hit. The storm was the worst it has ever been. It came suddenly and brought with it small pebbles that smashed into the sides of our Rathani brethren like arrows against armor. Their cries of pain mixed in with barking orders of their commanders filled the air. "Hold the line!" they would shout, as the sands would strip pieces of their skin away. Mothers cradled their terrified children, and couples shared a final embrace. We all knew we would not survive this one without massive losses, as the old man's corpse vanished into the sands. Then suddenly, it stopped. The howling winds and scouring sands just stopped. We were confused. What had just happened? It's a trick. The pain from the storm must be breaking our minds, we thought. It's a mirage, a dream. Then one woman's scream told us all what was going on. "Machines! The machines!" she cried. We looked up from our desperate huddle, and looked up to see we were surrounded by 4 massive machines. They were enormous, reaching hundreds of feet in height. 6 massive mechanical legs holding a bulbous head aloft as it stared down at us with massive glowing purple eyes. Beyond the machines we could clearly see some kind of field of energy holding the storm back, as if it were never there. Silence. Gnawed but dead silence for many minutes as we stood in reverent awe at the sight. For what seemed an eternity, we simply stood there as the storm dissipated. It was over fast, and for the first time we could see it clearly. It was not just an advancing column of dust as it always was. It was a twisting, spinning monstrosity of dust and rock that charged its way through the dunes. It would have killed most of us, if not all. A shadow slowly cast itself on the ground, covering us completely as if a god was reaching his hand across the sky to shield us from the burning sun. We looked up to see a ship. A massive ship, miles long, slowly lumbering its way effortlessly through the dusty skies and coming to a rest between two of the machines. We were stunned silent. No concept of what we were seeing. What was this? Within moments of this massive ship landing on the sands with a loud thud, a ramp opened up, and down this ramp walked a bipedal creature clad in reflective black armor. It was covered in strange symbols and insignias, looked to be made of a strange reflective metal, and had on its head a glass covering what we presumed to be its face. It held by its left side with its five-fingered hand a strange rectangular item, a book. The creature moved to the end of the ramp, stepping on the sands, and stood there. It then used a hand to gesture one of us to come forward. That one was me. I broke the line, using the moment of confusion, and approached the creature in a daze. By the time I was noticed, it was too late to come get me if something went wrong. I was mystified, entranced. The silence of the past storm must have broken me. This creature was around 3/4 the size of a Rithani, so only slightly taller than me. He looked down and held the book in front of him, opening it to the first page. It was made of a metallic substance. He opened the first page to show a beautiful drawing of this very moment. He looked at me expectantly, and I blinked. He turned the page and showed another drawing, this time with two bubbles emanating from our images. One had symbols of triangles and squares, the other had symbols of X's and Y's. He turned the page, and it was a picture of some strange device in his hand. He turned the page again, and showed a picture of him showing my character how to fit it onto his head. The next page showed the two characters speaking again. This time both speech bubbles were in the same pattern of X's and Y's. I got the general idea and smiled. He took this as a sign I understood, and handed me the device and the picture. I fumbled a bit, and it was a bit uncomfortable, but after he adjusted the device a bit, to fit me better, I could get it on me. "Hello, do you understand me?" he said. "Yes, I do. Who are you?" I asked, able to understand each other perfectly. "My name is Julius. I'm a human." "Why are you here? What is this?" I asked, perplexed. He reached down to his arm and pressed a button, and the doors to his ship opened at the top of the ramp. "Salvation." He turned the page of the book, showing an illustration of our people running into the ship. He turned the page again, showing pictures of us eating hearty meals, sleeping in warm beds. More pictures followed as he told a story without saying a word. As our people traveled the stars in his ship, growing, prospering, learning his technology and machines. Then finally meeting his fellow humans as we arrived near a new planet, one of blue oceans and green grass. I was hyperventilating. I dropped the book and nearly fell over. I quickly turned to my people. I had at that moment the biggest smile I could muster plastered across my face. I held my hands out and yelled out to all. My words echoed through the world. "Salvation!" I screamed, then stood aside to help usher my fellows on board. We were safe. "Jupiter Drive Yard's emergency hotline, how may I direct your call?" A delightful, happy voice responded, as I finished my count of the souls on board. "CIS, Cassandra's Kiss reporting. Please direct me to your colony rights purchasing department," I replied calmly, with as friendly a tone as I could, considering the stress. "Okay, one moment, please." I rolled my eyes as I was put on hold, having that terrible music played over the line. Jesus, it's 3183 and we still use elevator music from the 1960s. The line suddenly screeched and a male elderly voice spoke next. "I am Ambassador Jeremiah Sorensen. I represent Jupiter Drive Yards and its subsidiaries. How may I help you?" "My name is Julius, independent fleet ops of the Condor Legions. I have a priority 1 request for a functional terraforming candidate. Settlement as soon as possible," I said, firm and careful. "Oh, one moment. I think we have a few available." A few moments of silence. I could hear typing in the background. "Oh, more than a few. We have an S3 planet with a nitro-oxy atmosphere and stable biosphere with limited but active life, minimal predators. It has just been cleared for settlement," he said, sending me the data. "Please hold. I need to see the data and compare." I carefully compared the readouts. Same atmosphere, same biosphere, same general biological diversity. It was perfect. I'll take it. "Very well, sir. Payment of 2 million credits. Oh my. Before he could even finish, I transferred the amount into his account. "Your client must be most eager to get this planet." This is a personal purchase. It's an absolute priority. I can't wait forever as I have an emergency on my hands. Please provide coordinates and clearances immediately, I said, making sure to speak in a tone that conveyed seriousness. A personal purchase? From a spacer? Of a planet? You'll have to excuse me if I find this a bit out of the ordinary, but here you go. Credits received, coordinates attached to your invoice. Happy trails, I suppose? He was genuinely shocked. Can't say I blamed him. Thank you, close call. It took all of my savings. It will be at least another 20 or so years before I can retire now, but they have a home. I'm fine with that. I don't think the Admiralty Board would give a damn either. Once I've dealt with medical issues and got prefab set, we can start first contact protocol. This needed to be dealt with fast. It took barely a week before we came to the new planet. I ignored customs and broadcasted emergency landing procedures. It was barely 20 minutes after I landed I was ready to disembark. I headed down to the cargo bay to find 27,000 pairs of eyes, now staring at me expectantly. That little kid, the one I gave the first translator to. He was now wearing some kind of official robe. They must have made him their ambassador or something. "Hello, human Julius," he said. His voice was squeaky, like a kid. He barely reached up to my chest in height. "Hey, have a good flight? How's everyone doing?" I asked him, as I made my way to the boarding ramp. "Better than we could have ever hoped," he responded, and followed me to the ramp. I made my way through a hastily crafted shantytown made of fabric and reeds. Thin stalks of bamboo like wood, and a fabric that stank of cactus. Good to hear. Things are about to get better, though. How could they possibly get any better? We are safe. We have each other. What can you possibly give us that could get any better than this? Home, I said simply, and started atmospheric cycling. Atmospheric cycling in progress. Stand by. My ship's computer voice echoed through the cargo bay. Dead silence ran through as the ramp slowly opened. When it hit the ground, everyone was overcome by a beautiful feeling of green grass, swaying trees, and the scent of flowers carried on a breeze. I took my helmet off, showing the little creature my face for the first time. I smiled at him. It took all I had plus supplies. I'm not going to make my next delivery, and I'm more than likely not going to retire for a few hundred more years. But welcome home, friend. I extended my hand for a handshake. He lunged forward and hugged me instead. Worth it.